Yo, what's up, guys? So, another walk through my house here. Now, my friend asked me a question today regarding the topic of enlightenment, ultimately. Now, the way it's phrased, though, is that more scientifically, mathematically. Now, all of us, we're like fractals of the divine, right? Fractals of the source. So that relates directly to the Hindu concept of Atman and Brahman. Right, Brahman is the ultimate reality, that's what we all are. But since Brahman wells up into these individual body apparatuses, right, it becomes Atman. We distinguish it as Atman, self. It's really just the same thing. It's just a point of Brahman, so to speak. Now, so fractals of the source. Now she's wondering, if our purpose is to report back to source, to enhance the infinite through our collective individual experience, and eventually reintegrate with that, become the source once again, then is that the purpose of life? Is it the purpose to only end up feeling ourself, to become isolated, solitude? And if that's the case, then do we need other souls in our path? Are they obstructions to interact with others, if that's the end goal? And so I gave her some answers on this topic. Now, here's the thing. First of all, on this journey of evolution for each soul, each individual soul, interacting with others is a huge part of that evolutionary catalyst. That's why the game was set up this way. That's why this galactic logos set up the game of self and other, right? And that's probably carries throughout the whole universe. I can't really envision a game of the soul being established any other way. So having other selves, as the law of one calls them, is a huge advantage for the evolution of the soul. Other people provide us with reflections for our own actions, thoughts, and words. We put things out there, we be a certain way, and then we get the feedback from those other selves and even the universe in terms of manifestations coming forth, reflecting how we're being internally. So relationships is a huge arena for soul growth. It's going to happen unconsciously, whether you're just existing and just, floating through life. You're still going to gain evolution from that. But if you're not doing it consciously, then you're going to leave a lot of money on the table. And in fact, you're probably not going to change a lot. You're probably going to be like mostly the same person from age 15 all the way up to 58, right? Like tons of you know people like that. It's kind of like you see someone like aged adults and you're like, how do you still have that behavioral pattern? It's like, are you still trapped at age 18, bro? And the answer is yeah. Unless you actively, consciously strive to evolve yourself, observe and change what's there to get better results in your personal and social life, then yeah, you are going to stay the same age. In terms of mental evolution. So unless you're using the catalyst of relationships consciously, you really want self-evolution, then you're not going to get the most benefit out of it. But you still will. You're still gaining experience. You're still adding to your giant pile of experience to draw from and, pave your way to a greater height, right? The more experience you gather, the greater future height you can gain if you choose the path of ascension. All right, so other selves, yeah, they're not an obstruction. Now they can be. It depends on what path you want to choose through this dream world, this Saha world. Now we all get to a point, if you're doing social interaction all the time, yeah, that's going to be obstructive. There's a time and place and a season for everything, for every mode of walking through life, right? It's going to be obstructive if you're doing that all the time. All of us crave eventually isolation, periods of reflection and contemplation, That's going to happen to everybody, and there's a reason for that. Yeah, dealing with other selves can be obstructive at times, but it's like working out. You're not working out all the time, bro. You got to take rest days. Otherwise, your muscles fatigue and your tendons get ruined. Right? So you can't, that's not the way to do it. You don't just keep working out continuously. That's not the right way to evolve. You know, because you're forced to, that you have to take rest days if you want to make the most progress. You rest, you reintegrate, you recover, and then you attack it again. And you see how much strength you've gained in the process. That's why weightlifting is so rewarding. At least to me. You know, tons of other guys and women out there. It's like Pokemon too, like, you know, the level gauge, right? You get the experience points, you get to see the level ups, all the stats increase. That's why that's rewarding. We see it blatantly, right? All right, so the evolution of the soul, though, is the same. It's the same. We need periods of social interaction to gain reflections of our progress from the external world and new experience. But we also need periods of isolation so that we can do the cultivation in a more concentrated and pointed way. All right, and the ultimate depiction of that, the ultimate manifestation of that philosophy is the yogi, the spiritual seeker. Now, there may come a time in your soul evolution where you just want to become total hermit, whether for several years or just indefinitely even. Right? So in that case, yeah, maybe you're at a point in your life where other selves are obstructive in terms of actively putting yourself into social situations, relationships, things of that nature. So for that person, yeah, maybe choosing the life of a yogi, a hermit, a mountain sage is the way to go in terms of maximizing your evolution, your ascension progress. All right, there's a time where that comes for everybody, for every soul. When you finally become disimpassioned enough with the world through dealing with failures and setbacks and sufferings. Eventually you come to a point where you're like, you see futility. It's within your being. And that's when you know, I need to seek now the highest principle in life. Fulfillment through the world has not given me fulfillment. I've seen enough of it, whether it worked out or not, and I know that there's something higher to be gained, some higher happiness, some higher fulfillment or joy. All right, so it's not an absolute. It depends on where you are on your path and what your goals are, whether or not to seek evolution through relationships. And even adding to that, even if you choose a yogi path, everyone always comes back to the world eventually. Maybe you come back halfway through and you're like, hey, I'm kind of hitting a plateau here, bro, with my gains. Maybe let's go back to the world and try to accelerate through a new workout my progress. Let's evaluate my progress of my inner being by going back to the old circumstances, through dealing with other people who haven't evolved themselves at all. Let's gauge our progress. Let's see how we can evolve best under these new circumstances. All right, and so you're bringing all your whole skill set of mental qualities you've developed over that time, and you're applying it to a worldly life. Maybe you open up a business, a spiritual business. You start doing tarot or life coaching or massages or like Reiki or like whatever business you want to do. You just get involved in the world, and you're probably going to do some kind of service-based thing at that point because you're full of compassion for others, and you're not so concerned with the self anymore, the personal self. All right, so that's one option. You bail halfway to enlightenment. You return, and maybe that's the best way for that soul. That's what you're interested in. Maybe one soul brings the yogic path to completion. You find reintegration with God. the fractal reunites with the source, with the asymptote, if we're using mathematics here. The asymptote, what do we call that? An infinite point? I don't know. Let's just go with that. I don't have all of the mathematics terminologies memorized, okay? Yeah, so even for those people, some yogis are inclined to have more of an active teaching role. They open ashrams, maybe like Sadhguru, Jagadish Vasudev, huge public figure yogi. And a lot of misunderstandings come up from that, from the public eye of people who don't understand the way of realization and how that's not a limiting thing. You're not limited by enlightenment. It's not going to force you to sit in a cave all day. You can do whatever you want with it. All right, that's a whole separate story. But Sadhguru is a great poster child for that because he's starting the conversation of what an enlightened person can do and what they can look like. And it shows people all of their assumptions and beliefs about that, if they're discerning enough to take a look at that. So you can become a yogi like that. You can become any grade of teacher, right? But some yogis, some siddhas, some perfected beings, gyanis, saints, they might be more of like pratyekya Buddhas. Pratyekya in Sanskrit. Private Buddhas. These are enlightened beings that don't want to teach at all. They want to sit in the mountains and just absorb the light of the source. All right, so there's tons of possibilities here, guys. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that the state of the ultimate state, it's not best thought of as isolation and solitude. These are depressing words. This is not some desirable outcome that we're looking for here, if we're thinking of it in these terms. The whole point of God realization is that we're gaining permanent happiness and joy as this being. That's what we're all looking for through all these activities we do. We're looking for happiness and fulfillment and a cessation of pain. All right, God realization, enlightenment, this is the pinnacle. It's the ultimate. That's why we want it. We want it because it puts an end to stress and suffering permanently. It puts an end to samsara, rebirth, permanently. You're no more lifetimes as cattle, donkeys, and goats, guys. No more lifetimes of mostly suffering and despair. There's tons of examples out there. We've all seen them in the world. Tons of lifetimes that we would not wish upon our greatest enemy. Maybe some of you would. But that's why we want it. It's a desirable thing. It's the kingdom of God. That's probably the best descriptor for this state because it carries the connotations that are in alignment with the result, the nature of it. It's Satchitananda. It's being consciousness bliss. So it's not solitude and isolation. Yeah, you realize all is just your own self-nature. So self and other does dissolve. But that's the means for ending suffering. It's when you realize all this was just a charade, an illusion, a game. But then, ironically, that's when you can play the game to the best of your ability from that point on. Before that, we're limited by fears, we're limited by energetic restrictions, we're limited by mental tribulation, and whatever else we're caught up in that's draining our focus and energy. Once you gain realization and you become the siddha, the perfected one, that's when you can be of greatest service to humanity. Greatest service in your relationships. Yeah, it's kind of a waste if you're a siddha and you go sit on a mountain. You're wasting the ultimate gift to humanity. The best yogi is the one that returns to society and rains his blessings upon everyone's lives around him, just by being the example of human potential, right? That's what Jesus did That's what Jesus did. He actively wanted to be that example for people. The way, the life, and the truth. I am that. Right? That's what he showed people. Hey, look. I think he's right there. Jesus. Jesus alert. Okay, yeah, so that's when you have the greatest potential to impact society, to impact others. That's another major reason you want to evolve your consciousness. The less blind sides you have within yourself, the less negative qualities, the more mastery you have, the greater your potential to actually accomplish service work, which presumably is what you want, the people who are watching this video. Okay, so enlightenment is desirable. It's not solitude, it's not isolation. It's the glory, the kingdom, and the power. And you can return from your mountain retreat to the world of activity and people. And commerce. Look at Sadhguru, once again. He's traveling, he's lecturing. He's teaching yoga classes. He's teaching programs. He's doing so much good for the world. That's what you gain. Law of attraction, guys, that happens automatically, essentially, once you reach that state. Because now, like I said, all those walls come down, those limiting beliefs and fears. Now your very being is the law of attraction. You're gaining all of the auspicious things you need to live the greatest game possible, the greatest story, the most exciting story for you, for the character that you've become. Okay? So I think that fully answers that initial question. If we're fractals returning to the source, and that's the goal, are other souls an obstacle? And is the goal even really desirable if it's isolation, solitude, and you only feel yourself? All right. So I think I covered all the bases there. Let me know if you like this video. Hit like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.